He let his captors drag him through the dirt. His arms ached, 2 hands wrapped around each bicep like iron bands. He slumped, and the toes of his scuffed boots bumped over the stones and left trails in the dust. He kept his eyes low, a ragged and stained cloak hanging over his face. It was not a position to which he was accustomed. They debased him. They abused him. He bit the inside of his cheek until the blood filled his mouth. He struggled not to resist. They needed to believe he was broken, that he wasn't a threat. It was the only way they would bring him before their Kell. He'd spent weeks weaving the illusion that led the Fallen to him. He'd left bits of his trail where they couldn't help but find them. He skulked from planet to planet, Mars, then Venus, then Mercury, then back again, following rumors and whispers. He'd hid from the Guardians, from his own people. He'd let everything that they had built fall apart, while those still loyal to him searched every inch of this forsaken system. Now, it was time to stop searching and start building. He would need soldiers who answered to him and no one else, bodies to shape with will and magic and tech to his needs. These would serve. He thought they would take him to a catch, but they were deep underground. Not near the Cosmidrome, but it didn't matter. He'd never been particularly concerned with the geography of this blasted world. It was not his home. So he bent his head low and listened to the guttural string of hisses and clicks issuing from the maw of a would-be king in yellow. A broken ruler of a broken house, and the last of his kind. They were more alike than he cared to admit. When the creature's anger had burned itself out, he raised his head to look at it. He did not need to speak. One Kell rises, and another bends its knee. And the prince felt the little hum of starlight ripple through him, the one that let him know she would be pleased with what he had done. Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly. Today, I'm following the words of a fellow content creator. It's time to look into every possible fragment and learn about our enemies, especially the one at the head of the pack. Uldren Sov, once or still Prince of the Awoken, Master of Crows, and leader of an army only he has control of. His ultimate goals have yet to be revealed to us, but that's what character profiles can serve to help with, along with catch everyone else up to speed. Where do we begin with Uldren Sov? I suppose at the beginning. The Awoken themselves are not what I want to focus on, but we're still unsure their overall motives, and admittedly some of those motives can play a key part in what Uldren and Mara Sov are ultimately all about. As some slight backstory, we know that Mara Sov had to fight to get into the position she was at as Queen of the Awoken. Uldren served as a counselor of sorts, but his main purpose was to serve as an organizer, holding many different hats, if you will, that he wore. His Master of Crows title is one that gives him access to a network of spy drones that look like what their name imply, birds or crows in particular. They seem to be able to carry out several different tasks, like recon and repair. While most work directly for Prince Uldren, Queen Mara seems to take a few of them for her own purposes as well. This information can be found in the Royal Awoken Guard Grimoire cards, as well as Ghost Fragment Queen's Brother, in case you'd like to read over them at all. I'll give some links below if you'd like to read them for yourself, but as always, I'd recommend visiting ishtar/collective.net for a comprehensive listing. Uldren Sov is first seen by our Guardian during the Black Heart campaign, the first campaign in Destiny 1. His cocky and arrogant self is seen always close to the Queen of the Awoken while she sits on her throne. He does most of the talking, however, reluctant to help us with our trials against the Vex. This leads us down a road to fight off the heart of the Black Garden, thus saving the Traveler. Most of you will be very familiar with it, but if it wasn't for the Awoken, we wouldn't have been able to take down our first major hurdle in the solar system after our revival. He seems very familiar with what we need to enter the Black Garden, as it also seems his crows are able to enter it, shown by knowing how the heart was growing in strength thanks to information brought back by a crow. He's also familiar with that piece of the Gate Lord we need to enter the Black Garden and be seen as a Gate Lord, plucking the eye from the head of one that we retrieve. If nothing else, I wanted to outline the reach of Uldren and his Crow network. It is vast, it is everywhere, and it knows more than we probably do at this point. This can possibly be due to the time period that the reef has been organized versus our own city, but that's speculation, if nothing else. That timeline is a little tenuous. Anyway, after this point, we only see Uldren within the game one more time, and that's at the battle with Oryx as he enters the Saturnian system. From here, if you didn't pay attention to the lore of the game, you're definitely a little surprised to hear that Uldren is coming back. It's also just further back up to the account. If there's no body, they're not dead. Just remember that. The next time we hear of Uldren is within the Grimoire card simply entitled The Aftermath. If you still think the Grimoire isn't being referenced by this point, by the by, you're simply wrong. It's time to pay more attention than ever to it, especially with the reading that we had at the top of the show. This card gives us an idea of Uldren being alive and well, having survived the Battle of the Dreadnought, crash landing in an area of Mars in the northern hemisphere called Athabasca. With the changes that the Traveler has done to Mars, the region is now known as the Candor Isles. Today, it is known as the Candor Chasma, in case you get to looking at a map of Mars. But here is where we have to start putting the puzzle pieces together. It would be another year or so before we would hear anything about Uldren again. This brings us to one of the last records that we have of him and what he's been up to, and that's Ghost Fragment Reef 4. This is the card I read at the top of the show, and it goes over more than we could have hoped to see with the recent trailer and tidbits that have been shown to us with Forsaken on the horizon. Within, we're given bits and pieces of Uldren's path, of how he's laid a trap for those that would take him in. Though he had such a vast network of scouts, Uldren never did find or track down the Kell of Kings, the leader of an old fallen house called House Kings. Really, the Kell of Kings is the last major Kell that our Guardian or others haven't seen to take down just yet, but Uldren found a way to hunt them down, or at least to lure them in. After his crash landing on Mars, after battling Oryx, he went to Venus, then to Mercury, then back to Mars again. This second point in which he crashes onto Mars is the most important. We see it out in the Maadium subterrane of Hellas Basin, so very close to Rasputin and Clovis Bray. This was the final piece that the Fallen needed to find him, and so they do, taking him back to a place underground on Earth, or so it's assumed. This place back to the line, he thought they would take him to a catch, but they were deep underground, not near the Cosmodrome, but it didn't matter. He'd never been particularly concerned with the geography of this blasted world. It was not his home. With the reef being Uldren's new home, Earth would be a likely guess since that's where he may have come from before the collapse hit. Anyway, we then see that Uldren is taken to see a Kell, and it's shown more which one it is. So he bent his head low and listened to the guttural strings of hisses and clicks issuing from the maw of a would-be king in yellow, a broken ruler of a broken house and the last of his kind. The Kell of Kings had finally been located, but it was more because they wanted to be found, with Uldren being brought to them instead of the opposite way. But that still leaves open the questions. Why? What is it that Uldren is looking for? What does he need this house for? Is it to wage war against the city? Is it to simply overtake any enemy that comes in his path? You can easily argue that he is simply out to get his sister back, being able to feel her on the edge of his mind when he's able to focus. You could also argue that he's gone completely mad at the loss of his sister, wanting to carry on where she left off. These are the questions that we could ask when confronted with Uldren, the Awoken's overall goal still being that mystery I had mentioned early on. They have a want to be separated from the Traveler and the city. It's a choice they made to do so, but is it one founded by the necessity or want? Regardless of this, recently we've seen a few images that suggest what Uldren has been doing. He would need soldiers who answered to him and no one else, bodies to shape with will and magic and tech to his needs. These would serve. Whatever tech he may have found, whatever research he may have been doing on these Fallen, it's made them grossly powerful compared to what we knew of them before. It's given them the power to go toe-to-toe with one of the Vanguard. After all, some of us know the outcome that's been shown of that power. I had mentioned in my Forsaken analysis and thought that it seemed like these Fallen had powers linked to Ark at the least, but it might go further than that. If there's any kind of manipulation of light that Uldren was able to tap into to bring out the connection that the Fallen had to the Traveler, possibly ages ago, some have said that these Fallen almost look Hive-like. What better place to find information on the Hive than in the databanks of an AI that's been able to research them for centuries? Of course, knowing Uldren's path is only part of the nature of the Awoken. We don't know of Petravenge and if she'll be paired with us as friend or foe. We don't know of Mara Sov and if she is in fact dead after the battle with Oryx. We're unsure of the Paladins and the Teshiyun Witches of the Awoken Guard, if they will in any way help the city or help Petra if she does work with us. We are unsure of much about the Awoken, and I hope that this is what we'll see answered in Forsaken, along with much more. Uldren's path has been a winding tale, one that he has even made his own people feel that he's there to help. The Telesto's new entries suggest otherwise, and gives us plenty of indication of where his mind is at. Contingency reserves overdrawn. We underestimated nobility troth reparations. Uldren suggests that we open reintegration talks. Have you discussed endowment support? Uldren wants to set some of these members free. Why wouldn't he when it would only give him more test subjects to build his own personal army? Then again, he could just have a prison break. For now, this is what I can do for Uldren. This is the information we have on him so far. Speculation and all. It's all I can arm you with as you travel into the Tangled Shore. His record is still open, but it will be closed with a bullet once I reclaim Ace of Spades. For now, I hope this information was helpful to you in order to understand more of who Uldren is, and what he's like, and what he's about. He serves himself and his family, no one else. To Guardians and non-Guardians alike, I'll see you next Spacetime. Take care.